we have reached the Keegan Aiken closer, Greg Allen starting center fielder portion of the season. It's rough out there, y'all. It's not great.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, August 11th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap a pretty lackluster series loss by the Orioles at home against the Athletics this weekend. I'll recap all three games, including the O's getting the big offense early and holding on Friday night. A tough night for Brandon Young and a blowout loss on Saturday, and then the Orioles blowing a save in the ninth inning. They were so close to a series win, flipping it into a series loss. And I'll recap all three games, everything you need to know, coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner, and you can visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. So the Orioles dropped 2 out of 3 to the Athletics this weekend, a team without a home. And the O's now, after all of that, it's not great. They're holding on to dear life just above of the A's in the American League standings at the moment. The Orioles now 50. What are they? Let's do some math here. Either way, it's not very good. Yeah, they're 53 and 65. They're just a game up on the A's right now, who are trying to track them down for, I guess that is 13th or 14th place at the moment. It wasn't a good weekend of baseball, though. Let's begin with, I wouldn't say the team looked good on Friday night, but they won the game on Friday to open the series. I was in the ballpark. Somehow, despite this team being 12 games under 500, the Orioles are 3-0 when I am at Camden Yards for a game. I did see them lose at Nats Park early in the season, but when I go to Camden Yards, which I went to 20 games 2 years ago, I've been to 3 this year, they are 3-0. So maybe I just need to go to every game for the remainder of the season, and they'll have a chance. But let's start with Friday. 3-2 win for the Orioles to open up this series. Going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that one. And the first thing you need to know is we saw our first Adley Rutschman home run in a while. And Adley, he's really been good since coming off the injured list on July 28th. He had that oblique issue, which kept him out for over a month, but he had not homered since June 16th in Tampa. That was the last time we saw him leave the yard. But since coming off the injured list, again, July 28th, he hasn't hit the homers, so he hasn't had like the gigantic swings for this team. But these numbers entering play Saturday: 41 plate appearances, hitting .324, a 160 WRC plus, 8 of his 12 hits for extra bases, only a 12% strikeout rate. He's swinging the bat really, really well. That's like peak Adley production as a hitter. And he gets this homer off JT Ginn, the A's starter, in the first inning, gets a hanging slider, 2-run homer to give the O's a 2-0 lead. And he's now got a career OPS over 1,000 against the A's, which is his best of any team he's played against. And we know it was a rough end to last year. It was a rough 2 first months of this year for Adley Rutschman. But since June 1st, he's been awesome. Even with the missing over a month with that injury punched in between. Since June 1st, entering play Saturday, 315, 375, 543 slash line with a 152 WRC plus, 10% walk rate, 12% strikeout rate. That is the, near the top catcher of the game version of Adley Rutschman we saw for a few years there. Because the team has been so disappointing, I don't think it's gone as noticed as it should. But this is now, and again, he missed time in between, but this is now overall, even with the injury, a month or more of peak Adley, and that is at least a really big positive to take out of a lot of the negatives that are going on right now with this Orioles team. Second thing you need to know from Friday is that then Ryan Mountcastle came up and hit a home run of his own in his return to the lineup. Mountcastle, who had been on the injured list since May 31st with a pretty severe right hamstring strain, was finally activated off the 60-day IL and added back to the roster on Friday. He was in the lineup, hitting fifth and DHing on Friday night, and he homers in his first at-bat. Off of JT Ginn, he goes back-to-back with Adley, smokes a slider on a line to dead center field, 110 off the bat 433 feet, had the elite bat speed back there to put the Orioles up 3-0. And just the third home run of the season for Mountcastle, and his first since April 30th against the Yankees. Obviously, there was 2+ months of injury time that he missed built in there, but he had a 73 WRC plus and was hitting for just no power when he went on the IL back in late May. It was a really, really disappointing season. And for Mountcastle, like, he's going to need to climb himself out of this. He did, he had that hit on Friday. He draws a walk in the game on Sunday, had a hit in the game Saturday as well. Like, he's going to need to start to get it going. He's going to be in there pretty much every day, especially with now Tyler O'Neill and Colton Cowser on the injured list. We'll get to that in more detail on tomorrow's episode, but those two roster moves were made before Friday's game. And so Mansolino has said it's going to be more DH than first base for Mountcastle, getting Kobe Mayo those reps at first base. But Mountie DH Friday and Saturday. He started first on Sunday. Like, this is going to be a huge, 7 weeks or so for Mountcastle and his future, due to be a free agent after next year. The Orioles feel like they have their replacement for him in Kobe Mayo, who could already be producing better than Mountcastle with the struggles he's had. Going to be a really interesting but really important time for Ryan now that he's back. Third thing you need to know from Friday's win is that the Orioles offense didn't do anything after that. They got the 2 homers, the 3 runs in the first inning to take a 3-0 lead, and that was it. I mentioned they won the game 3-2. They did not score again in the next 7 innings. They got the Gunnar walk, Adley homer, Mountie homer in the first inning against JT Ginn. And then in the third, Gunnar had an infield single and Adley walked, and Ginn got out of the jam. Those are the only other base runners they got off Ginn in his 5 innings, who struck out a career-high 9 batters against the O's on Friday. And then a pretty poor, almost said Oakland, pretty poor A's bullpen came in after that and held the Orioles down. They only had 1 further base runner the rest of the game. Kobe Mayo walked in the 7th inning and then was erased by a double play. That was the only other Orioles base runner after that 3rd inning. Like, luckily they hit those 2 homers in the first, but 3 walks and 3 hits total in an entire game against the A's is not going to cut it. One of the worst pitching staffs in the majors. And granted, like, you have to consider the state of the offense. Greg Allen, who was signed Friday, Ryan Noda, and Dylan Carlson were all at the bottom of that lineup. But you're not facing a very good pitching staff, and it's not like it was the ace of the A's staff who was out there. Just a rough offensive game that kind of wrote the book for what the rest of the series was going to look like for the Orioles offense. Fourth thing you need to know from the Friday win over the A's is that Tomoyuki Sugano looked much closer to his early season self in this start. Goes 7 innings in this one, his longest start since he went 7 innings in a win over the Mariners in Seattle all the way back on June 3rd. So it took him over 2 months to pitch 7 once again, but he was good. Final line for Sugano, 7 innings of 1-run ball. He allows 5 hits, strikes out 4, and walks 2 on 91 pitches. He certainly allowed some hard contact, but got some luck with some balls hit right at some defenders, got some balls hit on the ground more often, easier to turn into outs. And he's kind of picking things up again, maybe in a little more sustainable way. Like, in his last 5 starts, Sugano now has a 3.58 ERA. We will absolutely take that. With a 3.90 FIP, he's allowing a 41% hard hit rate, an 8% barrel rate, and he's striking out 19% of the batters that he is facing. In his first 12 starts, he had a 3.04 ERA when he started off the season red hot. So you would say, oh, he was better in those 12 starts. But his 4.7 FIP was almost a run higher in those 12 starts than it has been recently. The barrel rate was higher. The strikeout percentage was 5% lower. I would argue that what we've seen Sugano do over the past few weeks is actually more sustainable than what ended up being a really good first 12 starts for him to open up the season. He's missing more bats. He's keeping the ball on the ground more. That is all good things for the way his stuff can play in the big leagues. Remember, he just had that terrible 5-start stretch, right, where he had an 8.87 ERA over 5 starts. That began with a start June 8th on the road against this A's team. So nice to see him bounce back against a similar lineup. Of course, Jacob Wilson is on the injured list, so he wasn't in there on Friday, but still a good turnaround. He didn't miss a lot of bats Friday. He got 5 whiffs on 41 swings against A's hitters, but his in-zone rate back up over 50%. The splitter was good. The sinker was good from Sugano. All good signs. And as I said after his last start, which was pretty good as well, like, if we're just going to get a 4 ERA Sugano down the stretch, just eating innings for this team, that's separate of if the O's want to think about bringing him back for next year. Like, that is going to be helpful for this team, just simply making it to the end of the 2025 season. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 3-2 win over the A's to open the series on Friday night is that the Orioles' new high-leverage bullpen was able to hold on in this one. With a 3-1 Orioles lead, Yennier Cano came in and got the eighth inning, did give up a run on a 2-out RBI single to make it a 3-2 game, but got the next out to keep the lead right there. And then Keegan Aiken came in for his second save chance in a week. Once again, it was because some lefties were due up, right? 2 of the first 4 hitters due up for the A's were left-handers, so it was an okay matchup for Aiken. The A's did end up using some pinch hitters there where he only faced righties. But I guess Aiken's the de facto closer, right? He gets the save last Saturday in Chicago. He pitches the bottom of the ninth of a tie game Sunday. Then he gets the save Friday and gets the save chance again on Sunday of this weekend, which we'll talk about. But I mean, with Bautista out and all the guys that were traded, Aiken just simply has more swing and miss stuff than Cano does. And those are really the only 2 like veteran been there relievers who are in this bullpen right now. So you're kind of picking between one of the 2 and you'd rather have a guy who misses bats later. So maybe that makes Aiken the better choice. And also Cano struggles against lefties, whereas Aiken's a fairly even split guy. Like he gets lefties and righties out at a similar clip. So that makes it, a little better to have him more in high leverage and can hold off against some pinch hitters a little bit better than someone like Cano can. I mean, Aiken did get a little lucky. I mean, look what I found behind the back grounder fielded for the second out. And then Luis Arias, just missed a game-tying homer on a fly ball to the warning track in left field that Dylan Carlson came up with for the final out, and the Orioles won the opener in this series. And then the celebration continued right from the win Friday to the induction of Adam Jones, Tom Davis, and Joe Orsulak into the Orioles Hall of Fame on Saturday. And the O's had a big first inning again on Saturday to take the lead, and then it was all downhill from there, turning into another 2025 Orioles blowout loss. I'll tell you how it happened coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Game Day Hugh. For Orioles fans like me, this one hits the mark. Game Day Hugh makes clean, no-logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, or anywhere in between. Now, for Game Day Hugh, they've got some awesome hats. They've sent me a couple, the orange and white ones. I can kind of wear them anywhere, but it's not just hats. Check out their split shade gloves made for the golf course or the perfect gift for the fan who has everything. And right now, you can get 15% off with code MLB15 at GameDayHue.com. That's GameDayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals, so now's the time to load up. Let your colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GameDayHue.com, code MLB15. So the Orioles win on Friday night. They have the big celebration before Saturday's game. Adam Jones, Tom Davis, Joe Orsulak inducted into the Orioles Hall of Fame. Of course, really cool, especially to see Adam out there, definitely my favorite Oriole of all time, one of the most beloved Orioles of all time as well, finally going into the Orioles Hall of Fame. But that's kind of where the good times ended, as the Orioles were bludgeoned 11-3 by the A's on Saturday. Let's start with what went right in that one. Well, Gunnar Henderson provided an early start. For the second straight night, the Orioles scored 3 runs in the first inning. This time, they were already down 2-0. Brandon Young had given up 2 in the top of the first, but the O's answered right back. Jackson Holliday and Jordan Westberg back-to-back singles to start the inning against Jack Perkins, a young A's pitcher who was kind of transitioning into the rotation, got really good stuff, but was pitching out of the bullpen for a while. And Perkins got 0-2 on Gunnar Henderson, threw a 96-mile-per-hour fastball up and in, not a terrible pitch, and Gunnar just turns on it into the seats into right center field for a 3-run shot to put the Orioles up 3-2. And after Gunnar, turned things around with a 902 OPS in June and an 881 OPS in July, he's got an OPS, around 880 now in August so far. He's just continuing to hit. Yes, that was just his 14th homer of the year. He hit 37 of them last year. The power has certainly been down, but basically everything else in his game is back to Gunnar level. And for Jack Perkins, this is not a guy, I know he's young, but he just doesn't give up homers. Just the 6th long ball allowed by Perkins this season in almost 70 innings between AAA and the big leagues, especially playing in the PCL in AAA, which is notorious for just homer after homer because of the layer and the air and where it is as opposed to sea level and just the way the ballparks play. But this is what Gunnar does. He's hitting about 430 against fastballs over 95 miles per hour this season. That leads all qualified hitters in the majors. The league is hitting about 243 against those pitches. Gunnar's about 200 points better than that. If you want to go with high heat or any kind of heat, good luck. Gunnar is going to be on it, and that is what makes him a special talent. Now, what went wrong for the Orioles is that, well, a lot of the guys who threw a pitch for the O's on Saturday did not have a good time. It started with Brandon Young, who got the ball in this one and had the shortest start of his big league career. Young lasted just 3 innings, allowing 6 runs on 6 hits with 2 strikeouts, 2 walks, and 2 home runs allowed on 74 pitches for the Orioles. Rookie right-hander didn't begin the game off well. Walk, and then a 2-run homer to Shea Langoliers. It's immediately 2-0 A's. Orioles get him the lead back. Then he serves up a 3-run homer to Brent Rooker in the 3rd inning, and eventually he was done after 3 innings and 6 runs. And the issue, it's the cutter. He's relying on that cutter again. He opened the season throwing his cutter about 20% of the time, and it got crushed. He went back to AAA for a while, spent a little bit of time on the IL with a shoulder issue, came back and cut his cutter usage from about 20 to 5%. He was still flipping it in there every once in a while because he clearly has good feel for the pitch. Like, he can throw it for a strike pretty consistently, so you don't want to go fully away from it. If you do, you get in a 3-1 count, a 2-0 count, whatever it may be. But the usage has been creeping back up over his past couple starts. And he threw it 27% of the time on Saturday, which was a career high. And it's not like it's a good pitch. Opponents here are hitting 350 and slugging 650 against Young's cutter coming into the game on Saturday. And it got hit around on Saturday as well. It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, this pitch has such good metrics. It's just that he's struggling with the command of it a little bit. Or guys are just getting lucky and balls are falling in. Like, no. Guys are hitting the ball pretty hard. He has good command of it. The metrics are terrible. An 87 stuff plus on his cutter makes it the worst pitch by pure stuff that Brandon Young throws. He has a good fastball with ride. He has a good curveball. I love his splitter, and he threw some really good splitters in those 3 innings on Saturday. But that fastball, 4-seam fastball, curveball, splitter, that is a good arsenal to attack lefties. And although lefties have been better than righties against him this year, the cutter is really his only pitch that is just there to attack righties. It's not a conventional cutter. It's got a little more break, so it looks like a hard slider kind of. But he needs to add a pitch. I think he should drop the cutter completely. He needs either a regular slider or maybe even a sweeper or a sinker. These are the similar problems that Kyle Bradish and Dean Kramer had early in their careers. They both added sinkers, and Bradish to a different level than Kramer, but they both got better as young right-handed starters after adding a sinker. I think Young needs to add a sinker and a slider or a sweeper and drop that cutter, because that thing is getting him into trouble, and he's falling back on it because when he has some command issues like he did on Saturday, I think he feels, and I think it's correct in terms of just throwing the ball in the strike zone, I think he has a better feel for his cutter than any other pitch, and that's why he keeps relying on it, because it's like, I got behind 2-0 again. I need a strike. Here's my cutter because I know I can throw it in the zone. But it doesn't get good movement. It's not deceptive at all. And if he throws it down the middle, guys are crushing it like the A's did Saturday, like a lot of teams have done to him, not just in the bigs, but in AAA this year as well. There needs to make a change. That's more of an off-season thing, so we'll see what he does usage-wise for the final month and a half. But if Brandon Young comes back on Locked On Orioles, a former guest, maybe we have a little chat about that cutter usage. Then it went over to Yarmiel Geraldo, who came in the 4th and literally was unhittable. Like, he threw a 1-2-3 4th. His changeups were disgusting. That was the best I've ever seen Geraldo look. And then he came back out there for the 5th, and he's almost out of the 5th. And then he makes an error on an easy ground ball back to the pitcher with 2 outs. Should have been a flip to first and the 3rd out of the inning. He boots the ball. The inning continues, and the floodgates open from there. And all of a sudden, after just booting a grounder, the A's score 5 runs in the 5th. And just, it was a 6-3 game, but that blows it open to 11-3. And the game is over. Like, I liked Geraldo's stuff. He got 8 whiffs on 19 swings, but you got to field the ball. The ball gets hit back to you. You got to field it. And then we went to Corbin Martin, because Geraldo couldn't even finish the 5th after that error. And what does Martin do? He allows double, walk, double before even getting the final out to end the 5th. When you go back to Monday, remember Corbin Martin's disaster out of the bullpen Monday, when he came in, allowed all 6 batters to reach against him, and then came out of the game without recording an out. That made it 9 consecutive batters that Corbin Martin had allowed to reach before striking out Nick Kurtz to finally end the 5th inning. Sadly, with the state of the Oriole bullpen, it's probably not the last time the things are going to get a little bit ugly this year. And you do have to shout out, right? Cade Stroud threw a good 7th. Grant Wolfram had his nasty stuff on Saturday. He was threw a scoreless 8th and 9th out of the Oriole bullpen with a handful of strikeouts, but it can get ugly when guys aren't throwing the ball over the plate and are having some struggles. And that's what we saw on Saturday. And the shout out for Saturday's game, it's maybe less of a shout out and more of a shutout, if we're being honest. Not a positive thing about the Orioles. It goes to Dylan Carlson. Unfortunately for him, it is not a good thing. Carlson got another start. He went 0 for 3 in the game on Saturday. Then he came in for defense on Sunday, ended up grounding out in the 9th inning. So I had 0 for 1, even though he didn't start that one. Dylan Carlson with that is now 0 for his last 35 at the plate. Let me say that again. Dylan Carlson is 0 for his last 35. His last hit was on July 27th, a 2-run single off Rocky starter Austin Gomber in the 2nd inning to put the O's up 2-1 in that game. And this is a Dylan Carlson who, if he goes 2 weeks without a hit earlier in the year, it's like, okay, he's struggling a little bit, but he's like a 4th or 5th outfielder. No. This is the Dylan Carlson who's been basically playing every day now with Mullins and Laureano traded, and now, of course, Cowser and O'Neill hurt again. And he still can't buy a hit. And the crazy part is, amongst that entire 0 for 35, Carlson has only struck out 4 times. It is almost impossible to put the ball in play 31 times and not have at least one of them fall in for a base hit. It's an 0.36 BABIP. That's batting average on balls in play for Dylan Carlson. And that's really since he got his last hit. Like, that last hit was the one hit. It's a 28% hard hit rate and a 7% barrel rate. Now, those are not good numbers, but those are pretty much in line with Carlson's full season numbers. Like, he doesn't contact the ball hard. So there's some bad luck involved because he hasn't gone 0 for 35 before. He passes Dwight Smith Jr., who was the last Oriole to do this. He had an 0 for 33 stretch in June and July of the 2019 season. So Carlson is behind only, I believe, and I need someone to double check this research for me, but I believe in the 1954 to the present version of the Orioles, there's only 2 other guys who have had worse than an 0 for 35 stretch. You have, of course, Chris Davis, who is the big league record, an 0 for 54 stretch between 2018 and 2019. And then shortstop Willie Miranda had an 0 for 38 during the 1956 season. And Willie Miranda, his thing was he couldn't hit. He played for the Orioles for 5 years, from 55 to 59, and had a 55 career WRC plus and over 2,100 big league plate appearances with the Orioles and other teams. So Carlson's bad. This whole outfield with the injuries and the trades is bad, is not fun to watch right now. And it's contributing to the struggles of this offense. And they certainly didn't help in what was another frustrating, disappointing loss on Sunday. Because although the O's, let's be real, they did not play well this entire weekend. And despite that, they were 2 outs away from getting a series win. I know it's a bad team. I know it's a team with a worse record than the Orioles. But at the very least, you're at home against that team. It would feel nice to get 2 out of 3 before the off day. Now, not going to happen, I guess. Not going to happen. The O's blow the save in the 9th. They lose Sunday. Tell you what happened to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer in the MVP race. It might not be the best odds to get, but Lamar Jackson is going to win that award this year. Crown your champion in August. They probably have pretty good odds to do it. Doesn't matter. This is the Ravens' year. Or you can parlay your division winner dark horses as well. Just visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because Future Day is one day and one day only. And it's at FanDuel. Play your game. So to finish things up, 'twas another Orioles loss on Sunday. A's 3, Orioles 2 in the series finale as the O's fall to 53 and 65 on the season. Let's start with what went right in the Sunday day game to finish off this 3-game set. Cade Povich had one of his best starts of the year. Second start off the injury list. He was pretty solid in Philly on Monday, his first start after missing, well over a month with a hip injury. Came back, looked pretty good. Pitched into the sixth against a really good Philly offense. A good A's offense, not as good as the Phillies, but still good. And I thought he was great out there. Final line from Povich on Sunday, 6 innings of 1-run ball, 4 hits, 5 Ks, 3 walks on 94 pitches. It wasn't perfect, right? You don't love walking 3 guys. His command was, a little bit erratic. He had a 4-pitch walk in the first inning. He was kind of bouncing around a bit, but when he needed outs, he got outs in this game. And you love to see that. Just the 4th time this season that Cade Povich has completed at least 6 innings. The other times he did it, it was April 6th in Kansas City. I don't know if you all remember this start. This was the start where he allowed 4 runs on 12 hits, but only one of them was earned in 6 innings. It was the first player to ever have the pitching line that Povich did in that game. It was when Jorge Mateo dropped that line drive in center field and all hell broke loose in the first inning. Next one was his best start of the year when he went 6 2/3 of 1-run ball against the Nats on April 24th. That was a game that, not a great series, not a great time for the Orioles, even when they were playing the Nats, but he had some other good starts. Like he had 5 2/3, 9 Ks against the Nats a little bit later that season. And that was the last game that Brandon Hyde managed for the Orioles. He had a 6-inning start against the Twins when he gave up 5 runs back on May 6th. And then you have this one. And it's probably not his best start because he walked 3, but it's right up there for Cade Povich. And, there's a chance for him to win himself a good chance at a rotation spot heading into next year if he can pitch well down the stretch this season, just like he did last year. Like the opportunities are going to be there. Povich is most likely going to be in this rotation for the remainder of the year. He got some good swing and miss on Sunday, 14 whiffs, a number you like to see. Also 6 of them on the sinker. That's a pitch that's really never been a swing and miss offering for him, but that had the most whiffs of anything that he threw against the A's on Sunday. So you like to see that, maybe a new pitch emerging for him to get some more swing and miss. And I just thought, like, overall, a good outing, right? It was tough. He did have 5 scoreless. The O's get him the lead. Jordan Westberg solo homer in the bottom of the 5th puts the Orioles up 1-0. Povich goes back out there in the 6th, does give up a run, allow the A's to tie the game, but gets out of the inning, finishes 6 strong, hands it over to the bullpen, and I just thought he threw the ball well. I think it's a really good confidence builder for Cade Povich. What went wrong? Well, the Orioles, they just can't score runs. I mentioned the Westberg homer in the 5th. Got a big swing from Kobe Mayo, pinch hit RBI double off the bench in the 7th, put the Orioles up 2-1. That was certainly a cool moment for Kobe, but that was it. The Orioles ended up scoring 8 runs total in this series. And sometimes you score 8 runs against a good pitching staff, and it happens. The O's could have won this series with 8 runs. Again, if they get 2 more outs in the top of the 9th inning, they win this series with 8 runs. But the A's are 28th in team ERA. They have a worse pitching staff than the Orioles this year, and the O's get 8 runs in 3 games. I mean, Saturday and Sunday, Jack Perkins, like, really good stuff. We saw it. He's going to be a problem for the A's moving forward. And Sunday, right, Luis Morales gets his first big league start. It's incredible electric stuff. Doesn't really know where it's going, but the A's like him. Maybe a future reliever, but they gave him a chance to start. And you can't really get, they scored 3 runs on Saturday against Perkins, but then let him settle in. You can't really get stuff going against these guys. And especially, it's a bullpen that just dealt away Mason Miller. Like, it's not a good bullpen either. It really didn't matter. On Sunday, Luis Morales walks 3 in the first inning and then gets out of a bases loaded jam. He ends up going 2 2/3 with 4 Ks and 5 walks, but the O's don't get a hit off him. And then they go Tyler Ferguson an inning and 2/3, Ben Bowden 2/3 of an inning, Justin Sterner an inning and a third, Sean Newcomb no relation scoreless inning, and then Elvis Alvarado gets the final 5 outs. They all were walking. The O's drew 8 walks in this game on Sunday. That tied for a season high. Now, walks are only going to get you to first base, so you can get a ton of walks and still not score a ton of runs, which is what the Orioles did Sunday. But the only other time they walked 8 times in a game this year, that was June 27th against the Rays. That's the game the Orioles won 22-8. So the last time they walked 8 times, 22 runs. This time, 2 runs. Where'd those other 20 runs go? They had walked 7 times, once in a game this year. That was in a 9-5 win over the Reds earlier this season. 8 walks and 2 runs is tough to do. How do you do it? Well, you go 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position, which is what the Orioles did on Sunday. You're really not making good contact with the ball. You're just getting on base and you're kind of going station to station because you can't come up with hits. And I understand it's part of who is in this lineup, right? Greg Allen was signed and started all 3 games this weekend. You had a lineup of, Holiday, Westberg, Henderson, Rutschman, Mountcastle. Fine. Top 5 on Sunday. Jeremiah Jackson, Alex Jackson, Greg Allen, Jordan Adams, with Kobe Mayo, Ryan Noda, Dylan Carlson also getting ABs in the game. Not exactly the 27 Yankees there. Not exactly Murderer's Row. Not exactly what the O's had 2 weeks ago, right? Yes, they're getting these guys these chances. And Jeremiah Jackson, he had a triple in this game, and then the O's weren't able to bunt him home with Greg Allen. Alex Jackson, right, had another extra base hit. He had a double and came around to score on the Mayo RBI double. Now that make it extending his big league record. His first 10 hits with the Orioles have all gone for extra bases for Alex Jackson. This guy's awesome. But they're not capitalizing. You get the Westberg homer. I mean, Gunnar had a big swing in this game with a hit. It's just, yeah. It's not fun to watch it. And I understand that a lot of it is the construction of the lineup. You trade away these guys. You put Colton Cowser and Tyler O'Neill on the injured list on Friday. So that's 2 everyday guys out of your lineup. So you're starting, an outfield. And I like Jeremiah Jackson, but of Greg Allen, Jordan Adams, and Jeremiah Jackson, this is not what we thought would be happening here on August 11th. But that's the reality. And it doesn't mean that the top of the lineup has to be quiet. But if you're an opposing team, you can pitch around those top guys a little bit, right? You can afford to walk a Westberg or a Henderson because eventually you're going to face Greg Allen. And eventually you're going to face a Jordan Adams. And you can get out of the inning that way. That's what teams do to bad lineups. The Orioles are a bad lineup right now. And that's how it happens. And that's how you lose a series at home to the A's and drop to 12 games again under 500. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Orioles are off here on Monday. So the good news there is that they can't lose today. That is definitely a good sign. They cannot lose. They're back in action Tuesday at home against the Mariners. But I'll still have a Tuesday episode. I'm going to talk about the Dylan Beaver situation, why he's not been called up yet, and talk about Samuel Basallo as well, kind of dive into the details of why the Orioles haven't made that decision. We'll talk about all those roster moves more in depth, right? The Greg Allen, the Tyler O'Neill, the Colton Cowser of it all, what it means for this Orioles roster. And then there were a few more minor leaguers released last week, and I kind of give them their due as they head out the door at the end of tomorrow's episode. But that's all on tomorrow's show. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.